Hey folks, welcome back to Horsemanship 101 again. I'm going to talk a little bit more, yet again, about tools, gimmicks, and gadgets because every time I do a video on this, people make suggestions that have watched it on other things that I've missed out on, and there's, like I said, the list is very long. But there's a couple more I'm going to cover. Actually, a couple of subjects, actually, within the one in particular is a nutritional item, and that can incorporate a lot of different gimmicks to solve nutritional problems with a horse. Everything from special feeds to special medications to slow feeder gnats, grazing muzzles. They're all gimmicks, and they're all to address the problem of poor nutrition in your horse. And that can be a lack of something or an excess of something. Either way, it's not getting what it needs, not getting a proper balance, and you're going to have a problem. Now, I always say that the best thing is to give the horse lots of choice. I got two of them rolling at the same time. That's actually unusual. And if you give them enough choice, they'll make the right choices, and they'll get what they need. Now, a lot of people go, well, that just isn't realistic here because of, we just don't have huge pastures like you got. We can't just turn our horse out 24/7 grazing. Well, you still have an option. Your option can be to not have a horse if you can't keep it in a healthy enough and natural enough environment that it's going to thrive and flourish the way I believe a horse should. You do have an option. It's still an option. You have a choice. It's a choice you make. Now, I'm not going to get into whether or not they're good choices or bad choices that you're making, but they're still a choice, and you're the one making it. You're choosing that you want to have a horse over top of what is actually going to be best for the horse. So that's your priority. That's your choice. And, so don't ever say you don't have an option. There's always options. Common problem, though, is a lot of places that don't have huge pastures like this and lots of open spaces that they have smaller pastures and paddocks that are only a few acres, and they're usually seeded, and they're usually seeded with kind of a grass mix of sorts, which absolutely does not provide the variation, the variety that a horse needs in its diet. Now, these guys like their grass, but they also eat an awful lot of different weeds. I've watched them do it, and they eat a lot of different kinds of grass, too. They also eat leaves off of small shrubs, blossoms off of, certain flowers, wildflowers. The things that they eat are just incredible. You keep a horse in an unnatural environment, and you end up with a nutritional problem. It's either getting, fat and lazy because it doesn't have room to move, and it's eating grasses that are far too rich and too high in sugars for them, for their own well-being, and they end up obese. You got to put a grazing muzzle on them, or use a slow feeder, or they just aren't getting enough of certain things in their diet, and you have to supplement them with grains and feeds and all kinds of nonsense that they're all gimmicks that solve a problem. The problem is the horse isn't getting what it needs, or it's getting too much of something, and you have control over that. And don't ever say it's not an option, because you always have an option. Now, one of the other things I want to talk about, another gimmick, as far as I'm concerned, is breakaway halters. And I've talked about these a little bit in the past, mostly halters in general. But one of the things that is very common, very popular, is what they call a breakaway halter. It's I'm not even sure. I've never seen one, actually. I've never used one. But it's a web halter of some kind, from what I've seen in pictures of them. That are designed to actually break in certain places so that the horse can get free if it gets trapped. Now, there's a couple of problems with that. Is first, if a horse ever does get hung up with one of those things, even if it does break and let them go, they may still end up with an aversion to a halter in the future, because horses aren't stupid. They know the halter caused the problem. So they're going to avoid a halter in the future. And that's not what you want. The other part of that is that the horse learns that it doesn't have to listen to the halter, because it can get away. On top of that is, if the horse can break a halter and get away, then it learns that it can provide its own release. It doesn't have to wait for you to say you're doing the right thing or it's okay or anything like that. They can simply look to themselves to solve their problems and forget about you. So breakaway halters are a really bad idea and can teach a horse a lot of bad lessons, as far as I'm concerned. And quite frankly, it goes back to something I've said before, is it's all about laziness and selfishness. You're just too selfish and lazy to be bothered to teach the horse to be haltered properly. I hear all kinds of excuses for using them, like, well, we live close to a busy highway, and if the horse ever gets out, we want a halter on it so we can get it back in quick. And there's two parts to that. Is don't be so friggin' lazy and go check your fences once in a while, and your horses will never get out. Okay, that's your fault. Don't blame the horse. Now, sometimes stuff happens, they get out too, but hey, if you can't catch your horse and put a halter on it, again, you're being lazy. You haven't taken the time it takes to train the horse, and it's going to cost you a lot more time in the end, using a gimmick to fix a problem. Breakaway halters don't solve a darn thing. They don't help the horse, they don't help you, and depending on the circumstances and things that happen, they can actually make things a whole lot worse. There's absolutely no good or legitimate use for a breakaway halter. There's no excuse for a breakaway halter. And the only excuses that I've ever heard anybody come up with basically all come down to lazy, because they don't want to take the time it takes to teach the horse how to be caught and haltered properly and quickly if there is an emergency. I don't even need to halter one of these. If they ever got out, I just got to walk up to them and put a rope around their neck and lead them back. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario, I just put my hand on their neck and say, let's go for a walk. So there's absolutely no good excuse for a breakaway halter. Breakaway halters are for people that are too lazy to train their horses or too cheap to spend the money to train their horses. And I have no idea what the things cost, but you're going to have one of them on top of a regular halter anyhow. So that means you're going to be spending more money. And so what are you saving? You're costing yourself money, you're costing yourself time, because a horse is always going to be hard to catch if you resort to or rely on a breakaway halter to solve your problems. So just another one of those many gimmicks. Breakaway halters, for haltering and catching horses in case of emergency. They're just an excuse to be lazy. They don't do any good. They can create a lot of problems. Nutritional needs for a horse, you always have options. You have the option of not having a horse and keeping it in an unnatural environment. You don't need to be using slow feeders. You don't need to use grazing muzzles. You don't need to use gimmicks to fix problems. There's proper ways to fix problems. The proper way would be, for a nutritional standpoint, put the horse where it can get what it needs, okay? Have a good day, folks.